how can you sort of have some transferable skill sets to sort of pursue strategic partnerships?
One way to go about this, Richa, should be your transferable skills only, because I've not seen your profile and the kind of experience that you bring in. Maybe I'll not be able to comment about the transferable skills here. But yes, if you are looking at transitioning into a strategic space more and not staying in a BD workspace again, I think when we have had folks who move out of BD and who get into strategy space also. I think I think the way they also do this is from BD also the some of the skill sets that are picked from the BD role also is more to do with your partnerships, your corporate partnerships, your engagement, the way you strategize things. If you have to move to a strategy profile, I think the way you should position your profile should be more in terms of strategy that you have taken up in your business development role versus talking a lot about the revenue, or maybe versus talking a lot about the revenue and the targets that you have met. I think it might also look good if you talk about P&L also when you're getting into strategy roles. So strategy roles, when we hire for strategy folks also, our partners would, it's more like icing on the cake. Our partners would really welcome if people understand P&L, if people understand some amount of finances, some amount of profit and loss. So I think this is one skill set that you can bring in from your BD expertise also.
So we are opening up the floor for the next 10 to 15 minutes where she'll be sharing her guidances, reflections, and insights. Over to you, Pallavi.
Thank you so much, Neha, for that kind introduction. Maybe we can remove the slide and just open it up for people to interact.
The next one.
And I would love for people to switch on the videos if they can, and we can have a very interactive, informal sort of a session.
I don't know if this is a relevant question or not. For many, like two things. One is looking at, and I was reading somewhere on LinkedIn, is that the corporates are not taking women of certain age, mid-age and above. And also the sabbatical is quite a thing in India.
Yeah.
Two things. And whereas during sabbatical also, people do upgrade themselves, or multiple things one does. And it can be commitment to one's own personal life also. So that kind of discrimination is I wouldn't like to use such a strong word, but still, I mean, it's a kind of experience going on. And it's not only gender based. I think it's happening. It's very generic, I would say. So, if any thoughts on these? Thanks.
Sure. I think like I left the corporate career quite early in my professional life, so haven't really been following it. But I completely agree, like in terms of the sabbatical being like not looked as an area where you can grow and learn and really upskill yourself. I think I'm also seeing a lot of sort of focus and emphasis on mental health and on accepting the career breaks, on focusing on oneself. And I'm seeing a lot of folks also putting their LinkedIn sort of timeline as working on oneself, right? Which is a sabbatical for them. So some changes are happening, I would say, but of course, like it is very few corporates and very few individuals. It will take some time for the change to effectively take place in terms of the sabbatical, in terms of the age. But definitely we are seeing at a macro level changes are happening.
But do you see that at international level, sabbatical is somewhere taken care of? And particularly you're talking about mental health. So that is one is, there is empathy. But do you see that in a country like India, where there are multiple applicants for one position? So do you see there is certain kind of opening which is kind of more from the grand optimistic way, or how do you get that?
I think like in terms of also the way the recruiters approach these positions, They are trying to focus more on the skill sets a particular candidate brings in. And there is a lot of coaching and sensitization also happening in terms of how do you consider the sabbaticals or some other areas of work. We are definitely seeing that in the organizations that we are interacting with. At Climate Asia and EquiLead, we are working with nonprofit organizations. We are running accelerator programs where we are sort of helping them improve their policies and practices to make them more inclusive and equitable. So I think like at some level, this change is happening. Does it translate overall in the sector? No, but we are doing our bit.
Thanks, Pallavi.
Thank you for the question.
Can I ask another question if that's okay?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
I'll quickly ask if you see, people talking about AI replacing humans, but humans having more of the AI exposure. Any thought on that? Thanks. That's the last question.
I mean, I will answer it very quickly. AI will not replace our jobs. People who use AI will replace our jobs. So there is definitely a need to constantly upskill oneself with the changes that are happening in the world. And currently, we are seeing that at a macro level, a lot of changes are happening quite fast, like, quickly. Like whatever is happening in the US now with generative AI also becoming a reality in our lives. uh, we need to be aware of the trends and how things are changing, and then constantly also upskill ourselves to meet the current sort of requirements that we see. So I am also like now in this C-suite position, but I am also like on the lookout of okay, which are the skills that I need to upskill myself. Learning from my juniors, the people who are just also sort of graduating from colleges. Like I think they are way ahead of our times. I think like there's a lot we can learn from them. So I think being humble and just accepting that it's a very different time we live in would really, really be helpful. But AI cannot replace human jobs. Like, that's not gonna happen. It's gonna be people replacing people.
So, one thing which sort of struck me about your profile and background is that you have managed to navigate through a lot many different organizations, including your academic training, including the fact that you are also a writer and you are speaking out on issues which sometimes can have a political connotation to them. It requires a combination of courage, creativity, also a lot of mentoring and support through is what I feel in my personal experience.
Yeah.
So could you please answer and reflect what your experience has been? Maybe, at some point you would have felt that maybe I shouldn't do this, and then you did it anyway. So that is something I would really like to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, a great question. I think, like, I haven't really thought about it, but what comes to my mind is I think it was never like I shouldn't do this and then I did it anyway. It was always like a gut feeling of let's do this, right? And then jumping into it and then like setting a goal and then trying to achieve it, working really hard to achieve it, right? So it was more on along those lines. And of course, when I was moving from corporate to development sector, a lot of people said this is career suicide. Like, what are you doing, leaving a very good corporate job and moving there? But I did it anyway, and I think it was the best decision. Like I learned so much at Gate Foundation. I was working in public health. The bar charts changed from increasing profit margins to increasing lives saved. I mean, just that kind of an impact when you can have, I think it really uh, adds meaning to your life. And then moving further along and moving further like closer to the impact that's happening on the ground. So setting up own NGO, learning from it, failing at it, and then now like building Climate Asia. I think it's been quite a journey. I did take sabbatical also. And I did a bunch of things. I tried being an artist and exploring if that's a viable career choice. Didn't work out. That's when I also published my book. So I think like all the things that are being discussed, I completely resonate with it. I think I've been in a way lucky also that some of the opportunities worked in my favor, and that's why like I could get a seat on the table in some of the rooms where it's difficult to get into. But it's always been like, okay, let's follow the intuition, like what do we do now? And now this opportunity was like, okay, need to work at the intersection of gender equity and climate change, need to work in social entrepreneurship, and like thankfully this worked out.
Bharati is asking, how would you recommend negotiations for remuneration, especially around asking for pay parity within organizations? What is your view in the sector around this? I often find negotiating is this tricky. Pay may be good and competitive for me. However, it becomes divulged over time that parity wasn't in place necessarily for the CXO role.
Yeah, I think that's a great question and something
I
that's
think
like,
I'll just add to.
please.
Can I just come in? Maybe a similar kind of question that I had on my mind. Like, how do you know your exact worth that you should be asking for? Like, because you were in a different sector or different organization. If it's an Indian-based NGO, if it's a like foreign-based NGO, they will have different benchmarking and all that. But how do you know exactly? And once you've entered into the organization, how do you ask for your next promotion or the next pay range? Like you're stuck in one organization, you're enjoying the work, but if they're not paying you well, how do you move
Yeah.
around the pay scale and all that?
Yeah, I think like to answer your question on how do you know your exact worth, and um so there are some salary benchmarking reports that are available which can kind of help you within the particular geography and sector, like you know what is typically offered in terms of your work experience and your credentials. And also like you can do a little bit of research in asking from peers or acquaintances or friends who are in a similar sector, like you know what should I ask, and you know like I need to have a range in mind. So I think little bit of research you can do primary and secondary to get that. And once you're there like in the position, and if you want to negotiate the compensation, I think it's uh, it's very very important to sort of like, this is something that we learn in the negotiation class, is like for you to set the anchor point. So for example, like if you go and say what will you give me, of course like they will like you know say like put a point somewhere that's much lower, and then it's very difficult to sort of negotiate from there. But if you set the anchor point that now my expectation is this much given how much I've contributed, and then like I can negotiate around it, but this is what I expect. So I think being upfront about what you deserve, what you're expecting, and also like in terms of also the research that you've done in the market, that also I know how the benchmarking is working out. I would like to like sort of be at this pay scale. So that's how I've seen like many people negotiate their salaries, and it has mostly worked in their favor.